good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. This morning, I'm Chamberlain. So,
well, it's Homestay.
Homestay, is it?
Yeah, Homestay.
Okay.
Good morning and welcome. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, a bit hazy, cloudy. It's uncertain whether the dry season is here in Abuja to stay or whether the rains are still struggling to come. But whatever the case is, it's a beautiful Wednesday morning.
Just bring it on.
Yes, thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm happy to announce to you that it's exactly 2 months before this year is over. Today is November 1. Welcome to the show. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Yeah, I know. Time flies. So, 6 says the clock. What you have to do quick. The palliatives, gentlemen. The palliatives, governors. All eyes on you all, just to ensure that you do what you have to do. And the government, too, themselves, they know that they've got to ensure that all of those measures that they're trying to put in place, they've got timelines, they've got practical steps, schemes that people can indeed see, programs that they can, at least that would engender a lot of confidence, such that, you know what they say about capital, how, it's amazing, though. Capital is a coward. Please, when threatened. All those narratives. In spite of all of that, it just appears as though the players sometimes forget that when they carry out certain measures. But we'll see how much of that we can also keep an eye on, because they'll be having the retreats, ministerial retreats. Incidentally, today, 1st of November. So we'll explore that and find out what they intend to achieve with all that. Do they feel the pulse of the people? Do they know what the people are going through? How do they plan to respond to all of that? So that will be part of what we'll look at today on the program. But how could we forget about what's going on in Rivers? I know many expected a lot more reaction yesterday, but when they then said the president intervened, that douse tension? Is it on easy calm? The governors themselves, PDP governors, also met on the matter. I understand the Rivers elders also met on this matter, so, but I don't think we've heard the last of it as of yet.
No, sometimes, political analysts will tell you about how when you take a look at the speed of things that have happened, in one day, and it signifies that trust might be at stake. I do not want to say trust is broken, but trust might be at stake. And if trust is at stake, the question is, how do you rebuild it between the two of them, between the two major actors? The current minister of the FCT has said that, look, this is an internal family wrangling, and that, families will always sort themselves out. They will always find peace. But then when families leave their wrangling and begin to use the instruments of state, that is no longer a family wrangling. That is now something that the state has been invited into, and the state needs to take action. We spoke with a guest here yesterday who said that, part of what has happened in River State needs consequences. For instance, if indeed the burning of the State House of Assembly was intentional and was carried out by people that are known, that cannot be interpreted as internal family wrangling. If indeed police were aware that a governor was amongst a group of people walking towards the State House of Assembly and he's deliberately shot at, and water cannons are fired at him, that is not internal family wrangling. Those are actions that are punishable under our laws. When you now find also a situation whereby, I don't know, we've seen this over and over again, and nothing usually happens to it. What we usually see is that, that this matter goes to court, where you see, a purported factionalization of the State House of Assembly, where, a group of people sit down, maybe they have the mace or they don't have the mace, as the case might be, and they carry out whatever they do. lawfully or unlawfully. And then you see another group of people who say, oh no, now we have our own speaker, or now we have a new speaker. Now, how that is resolved, politically speaking or legally speaking, will be for the courts, and I think will be for that. Maybe that will be in the realm of legality and in the realm of politics. Well, these two initial actions which I have enumerated, these are things that are going to cost the people of Rivers State money, time. They have elected legislators to sit and make laws for them, for the good governance of their state. The chambers where they're supposed to sit has been burnt. And if it, as I said, has been deliberate, there needs to be consequences. If the police has deployed itself to be used, for or against factions within the state, there needs to be consequences. While, of course, there can always be political settlement, but I think that there needs to be a clear message that whatever wrangling you have, whatever fighting you have, whatever infighting you have, please leave out the instruments of state in this. Resolve your differences as amicably as you can, or politically speaking as you can. But wherever it is that instruments of state are involved, there ought to be consequences, Chamberlain.
Because the thing about that is this, now that we hear that the president may have intervened, trying to douse the tension, chances are that as a result of that quote-unquote intervention, all of these cases that are supposed to have been investigated by the authorities may also be, what?
That nothing will happen.
Swept under the carpet or relegated to the background.
And that's a very terrible signal, because don't forget that yesterday, the president held his very first police council meeting. Yeah. The police council now involves, I think there's a broader, let's say, a broader space for consensus and for consultation. That's what's supposed to be. You have the Police Service Commission chairman who was there. You had the IGP who was confirmed by the police council. You also have governors who must sit, everybody must agree on who the new IGP is. So if this is the situation, and part of what we heard from the Police Service Commission chairman yesterday, Mr. Solomon Arase, who himself used to be an inspector general, was that they're also looking at police reforms. So if you're looking at police reforms and there are no consequences for bad behavior, then what sort of reforms are we going to be looking at precisely?
The other aspect of this, Rankwa, is that the people, not just Rivers State now, generally speaking, but in this case, Rivers, because that's where this crisis seems to be brewing, young folks who always tend to lend themselves as cannon fodder for all of these things to happen, while many of them are trying to eke out a living. Then people just recruit them to go do a job for a few hours. Chances are that they could even be shot. Chances are they could lose their lives in the process. But irrespective of that, they still take all of these things on and yield themselves as tools to be used. Now, the thing is this. Up there, now we hear about them settling or on their way to settling. When this settlement or whatever it is will be done, youth will not be there. So they will keep fighting on the behalf of these people on the streets. They could be maimed. They might not even be remembered after the fight. And these people would have settled themselves. They would have moved on. So for young folks out there, it's because, look, we're all going to buy fuel at 6.40, depending on where you are now. So it's about sustenance and ensuring that, look, you could see your future. You could plan. But if you want to lend yourself to some of these things, good luck to you.
You know, Chamberlain, sometimes politics, we've been told, is emotional. It's an emotional thing. And sometimes when...
largely interests.
Yeah, it's largely interest. Most times we don't see the interest. But oftentimes when people hear a particular case, they either decide for or against whoever it is that they want to support. And you cannot stop that. So sometimes, but I think that, as you said, young people really need to consider when their emotions begin to lead them, in whose interest is their emotions, or are their emotions leading them? Is it in the interest of the politicians, or is it in their own interest?
No, they can support. of course you have to support one way or the other if you like to. But what I'm saying is you need to learn to draw a line of this your support. Understand to what extent would you go. So it's just about you thinking, because you can't just blindly support or foolhardily. Well, it's up to people to decide, because we've seen this time and again, and it will happen again. So the question I did ask the former governor was not, it was, I mean, you know how they say, look, having exercised yourself in certain things, you know what's going to come next. Some of this is not rocket science. It's just out there for people to see. So, Ayo, thank you for reminding us it's the first. So you get to a lot where you get to take a look at some of the data. Or, I mean, I know you've always spoken about some of these matters in terms of ensuring that governments at different levels work. Yeah. And so you could imagine if certain things were going right and how we will be in good stead. Don't you think we're not?
Well, I'm actually comforted by, you said everything that needs to be said, you and the Malcolm, but I'm actually comforted by the interview we had with Professor Richard Okocha yesterday, Mr. Okocha yesterday, that, you know, the politics of it, the law or the legality of it, they have to be, you know, quite given credence. And that speaks to what Malcolm was saying repeatedly about consequences. The law has been constitution. The law has been broken. The Constitution has been denigrated, whichever way we want to look at it. Is it now going to be given some makeup because the president has waded in? Are there going to be consequences? The authorities there literally divided the police, literally divided the police against themselves. Some were with the governor. Some were shooting at the governor. According to the governor, we're not there. So here we are. The police literally divided against itself. So where does that leave the people? That is the question. And I'm hoping, since the police said they're going to investigate fully, no, Chamberlain, for once, I want to disagree with you on this. Let me hope that something will come out of it and we will get a report from the police about what has happened in Rivers State.
Okay, you know what hope does to people, but if it's deferred, but okay, then it's allowed sometimes if it can give you a lot of hope and put a smile or lift your butt, you have to be realistic with some of those hopes, actually. All right, that said, let's jump right in and take a look at some of the dailies here this morning. As you can see, I'm going to start with the Vanguard newspaper here today. They focus on Rivers. Tinubu wades in. Wike, Fubara meet. Greet in Abuja. There you go. Rivers government denies sack of Chief Judge. 23 LG chairman. Already. So you see these things are unfolding. So when you hear certain narratives and you run with them, that's why we say, just stop and think. Look at this now. PDP asks Freedom Party members to sheath swords. Dispute in Rivers has been resolved. PDP governors. Oh. Thank Tinubu for intervening. Police arrest Rivers NYCN chair, 15 pro-Fubara supporters. That's National Youth Council of Nigeria. I think they said they were trying to form in trouble, going to the speaker's house, trying to pull the gate, all those kind of narratives. So there you go. Now they have to answer for themselves. Youths maintain occupation of government house gate. So I'd like to ask one of these youths, why do you think these persons are even, at daggers drawn? Do they know? Do they know why are they even supporting them in the first place? Do you know? Maybe they do, and the rest, many others don't. So is it the herd mentality that we see playing out? Nigerians have taken steps backwards to remain a country, ascribed to Chifanyoko right there. You could see that. PDP governors welcome Supreme Court judgment, slam contradictory ruling on Plateau. They will negotiate. They know how to do these things, this chess game that they always talk about. But equally important is this one, electricity. Operators seek cost-reflective tariff as subsidies hit 3.34 trillion naira. So the quote, cost-reflective tariff narrative, I don't think it will end. You spoke about the licenses of discos due for renewal
today
or suspension. So I think we'll have to keep tabs on that one to find out where are we in the scheme of things. How do we progress moving forward? So several questions in that regard. But that will be Vanguard this morning.
Well, I'm looking right now and a little spoiled for choice, to be honest.
Oh, again? Oh, man.
Yes. I'm just thinking, should we go with Daily Trust? Because it has an issue that seems to be looming. Or shall we take a look at Leadership? Or shall we take a look at New Telegraph? Well, let me go with Leadership for you now.
Okay.
Leadership has this. Impeachment saga, uneasy calm in Rivers as Tinubu intervenes. That's the lead story. 150 protesters arrested. Fubara denies sacking council chairman. PDP urges calm. So very much in line with what you've read there. I think now there's clarity. So don't forget that on Monday there was so much dust. It was like, an explosion happened and then, there will be plenty of dust and all of that. You're hearing this, you're hearing that, and you're not certain what is what. And then on Tuesday, dust settles, and then you're able to tell, oh, okay, no, this didn't happen. Okay, no, that didn't happen. This is true. This isn't true. So right now, we know the River State government has come out to say, no, we didn't sack local government chairman. No, we didn't remove the chief judge in the state. So these we now know. And I think that's very important. That we're able to separate facts from fiction.
Yeah, so a good thing. I mean, the ones we saw on TV are the ones you could rely on.
Yeah.
Whatever else you didn't see, there you go. That's your answer.
But I think that there needs to be clarification with regards to what is happening with the leadership of the State House of Assembly.
Yeah.
That is now very, very important.
Where will they sit? Will the National Assembly wade in? What do they do moving forward? So
the National Assembly,
all of that.
That's too far.
Well,
they can sit. The governor said, I'm the chief security officer of the state.
Yeah, but
I'm the one who will provide a new place for you to sit.
He's executive. It's their separation of powers.
Yes.
They can decide where they go and sit. They can. He's not to decide for them where they can go sit. So to that extent, they
I found it a little curious, but I mean that's what he said. And you know,
he is chief security officer.
Yes.
But executive, legislature,
he can't determine for them
separation of powers.
He can't determine for them where to sit.
No,
is that what he's saying?
I don't think he can.
Okay. Well, whatever it is, now we also know that a new speaker purportedly emerged on Monday. So will he be joining them? Does the suspension which held on Monday, with the other group, does it still hold? I mean, they removed the leader, according to them. Is that still holding? Or
will those speakers come and tell us, no, we did not impeach any leader.
Exactly.
No, we did not remove any leader. We did not plan. Look, you've seen denials coming through already. So just stand by. You never know.
So who knows? I mean, that's what we now need to know. Whether all of the actions that happened on Monday were not avoided. Then
if they could turn back the hands of the clock.
Indeed. So the only evidence that we will now have that anything even transpired at all will be the videos that we saw, and also the fact that the State House of Assembly remains burnt. So when all of these things happen, people really need to be careful, Chairman, and as you said, don't lose your life over any of these things, please. Okay?
Because life will go on. It won't stop.
It will go on, and as you are saying, a number of things, I don't want to say can be reversed.
The show must go on.
But this is what leadership is reporting. Uneasy calm in Rivers as Tinubu intervened. 150 protesters arrested. Okay? It does appear that there might be consequences. Fubara denies sacking council chairman. PDP urges calm. Okay? Page 4 is where you find the story. And then you also see right there, Akpoti wins appeal as court clears silver in Bayelsa State. Okay, so some landmark judgments also given yesterday. It was unclear as to whether or not there was going to be a candidate of the APC in the upcoming off-cycle election in Bayelsa State for governorship. And also in the matter of the Kogi, I'm not sure what senatorial district is now, but remember that during the February 25th election, shortly after, Natasha Akpoti was congratulated by many people, and people just assumed that her victory was taken for granted because she did go through a lot. We saw on national TV, you know, holes being dug in the road, you know, preventing INEC officials from getting
They wanted to fix the road. The governor said that, you know, there were some issues on the road and...
what a very curious way
of
fixing roads. We fix roads by digging holes in them. And we fix them a night before elections. Anyways, whatever happened, Madam Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan is now a senator, a bona fide senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And I think that congratulations are in order, at least for the women folk. Let's leave it there for Leadership Newspaper.
Well, the next paper is, before I go there, Chamberlain, you didn't read Mr. and Mrs. this morning. It's November 1, so let us celebrate the fact that we are there. It's Mr. and Mrs., and Mr. is with his hands akimbo saying, I want a delicious soup with assorted meats, like cow leg, cow tail, goat meat, cowhide, liver, kidney, intestine, crabs, shrimps, periwinkle, and 7 different types of vegetable. And Mrs. is asking, is that soup or evil spirit or evil forest? The details you'll find on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. But let's switch to this Nigeria newspaper today. And what do you have on its front page? Nigerian passport. Many applicants unaware of minister's 2-week directive. That's according to a report. And what does that mean? It means you actually can get your passport within 2 weeks. Is that what it means? Find the details on page 4. But then there is a rider. Some immigration officials have made collection of passports difficult for Nigerians. Who is saying this? Details of that you'll find on page 4 of this Nigeria newspaper today. And that picture is of the chairman of the Police Service Commission, Solomon Arase, congratulating the now confirmed Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, after the NPC meeting. But here's right under that picture, you find Rivers crisis. Tinubu wades in, says Bala Mohammed. And a writer, Wike, says issues not ethnic-based. Find the details of that on page 5. Right beside the nameplate, National Assembly passes 2.1 trillion naira supplementary budget for second reading. The details you'll find on page 6. And Chamberlain, you were asking about palliatives the other time. I remember Sarah put out a statement asking the question, asking the governors to give us details of their palliative spending so far. Question, dear governors, I mean, you asked them that same question again. How far so far? That's this Nigeria newspaper today.
Yeah, we want them to publish how they've spent the monies that have been given to them. How do they intend to also spend the other 3 billion that will be given to them? We're talking billions, guys. And so if you want to even seek small loans, you will bring almost your life history to banks or wherever. So you're talking about 5 billion here. So why shouldn't that be? We'll take it for granted that those are the things that you should put out there for people to see. It's public funds, remember? So the public has a right to know. Take a look at The Guardian next. MDA's firms shun local data centers, spend scarce forex abroad. You see, why? Why will this happen? I guess we're going to follow up on this as well and find out what's going on here. Look at the global stats. They give you all of that. Then investment profile. Investment surpasses $230 million as Lagos claims $1 billion FDIs. Claim. MDA's e-commerce banks still host content abroad. Okay, I know they might have their reasons. Probably that's where Boson and his team might have to have a look at sort of some of these things and ensure if we have the capacity, if we have all of those things here, would there be any reason for them to store it abroad? So those are the considerations.
Because people can make all of those investments.
Exactly.
And then you shun them and then you patronize those abroad.
Yeah, you won't
but I mean, they have examples.
So it's something we should focus on moving forward.
They have examples
and then,
in leadership.
Yeah, NSAS, NHRC, that's National Human Rights Commission, receives panel reports from 16 out of 29 states. So lest we forget, it's equally important that this it's not relegated in the background or sacrificed on the altar of all of these political shenanigans that you might see here and there. So that's the Guardian today, though.
Well, Daily Trust has a very big advert on the front of it this morning. I think the governor of Imo State is advertising what he's done so far. You might want to, take a look at that. But the lead story is very important, and I think that, a lot of attention needs to be paid to the lead story right there. Cash scarcity returns to Kano, Borno. Banks ration withdrawals. ATMs run dry. Abuja BDC operators decry Naira crunch. It's no longer dollar crunch. The BDC operators are now this. So as a result of the fact that Naira is scarce, shouldn't it now gain against the dollar? Maybe you should.
Why would that happen?
Is where you find details. Okay, so this last rider might provide the reason why we're saying this. Old notes won't be phased out December 31st. That's according to a CBN official.
So what's the hype and the rush? Why this scarcity?
So you know that at the beginning of this year, Chamberlain, we did face a big situation with Naira scarcity.
Yeah.
And we saw how the Supreme Court had to intervene to say both notes, old notes and new notes, should be used side by side till December the 31st.
Yeah.
In the hope that would give enough room for the CBN, if it really wanted to follow through with its policies, to phase out the old notes, and the new notes should be fully in circulation. But what we've since found is that the old notes are still very much in circulation.
That's right.
And the new notes, well, they're getting even more scarce by the minute. So it does appear now that maybe there is some attempt to withdraw the old notes. It's unclear. But this is what the papers are reporting, and they're seeing it in Kano and Borno. These are like the first two states where it was seen this scarcity is being felt very vigorously. So we might want to see, I think the CBN might want to pay attention to this story and allay the fears of the people come as we approach December 31. And don't forget, there's going to be it's a festive season. There's already enough hardship in the land. We cannot add the hardship of Naira scarcity to it as well.
And besides, no marketer or anybody should all of a sudden come up and say, we can't accept your old notes, whatever that is.
Yeah,
because the way this is going now, that might as well be the next steps.
There needs to
no
be,
such thing.
Yeah, there needs
as
to
they say, new sheriff in town. They say, hey, sheath your swords, everybody. Things will go on well. 2
months to December the 31st. Today's the 1st of November. There's sufficient time for the CBN to decide precisely how it wants to move and give the people information as to what its direction is. This is not a very good sign happening in a commercial city of Kano and also in Borno. I think that needs to be addressed. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
I would have thought that the CBN, they have all of these scenarios just ahead when they're doing their SWOT analysis, how we need to put up information about this for people, because it's about planning, really. So
maybe
people can plan.
Maybe they haven't, but maybe they just haven't shared the information.
What are they waiting for? Today is first.
Maybe they just haven't shared
the information. Before India will tell us, it's the 1st of December.
But let me just quickly go through this new telegraph because it's very closely related. And look at that. Senate set to probe printing of new Naira notes by NSPMC.
Okay.
So that is also right there on the front page of New Telegraph. Tinubu requests Senate approval for 2.17 trillion Naira supplementary budget as it scales through Rep's second reading. President forwards MTF to NAS ahead of 2024 budget. Senate confirms Adedeji as FRS chair. So that also happened yesterday. The FRS now has a new boss. No plan to redenominate Naira, says CBN. So that might be another thing that is fueling it. But while they're giving all of this information piecemeal, there needs to be like a very comprehensive information sharing to media houses and all platforms, to Nigerians in general, about the status of the Naira, so that people don't hoard notes ahead of the festive season or ahead of January 1, as the case might be. We're going to have to leave it there for New Telegraph.
Yeah. So that ends a look at some of the dailies then. So we will be back in a moment. Stay on with us.
It's not the best of times for lawmakers of the Rivers State House of Assembly, as the House is currently divided against itself, with two of the members jostling for headship of the Assembly. Here, one of the groups of lawmakers believed to be loyal to the FCT Minister Nyesom Wike is holding a press briefing to address what he calls misinformation regarding the position of the Speaker of the House of Assembly.
Dear Rivers people, our attention has been drawn to some media reports alleging a change in the leadership of the Rivers State House of Assembly. Ordinarily, we would have ignored this report in order not to dignify an impostor, but would go ahead to properly inform the general public. We therefore advise all those concocting unwarranted stories to be mindful of the consequences.
In another part of Port Harcourt, the River State capital, some residents have been reacting to the crisis at the House, as well as the move to impeach Governor Siminalayi Fubara. For the former spokesman of PANDEF, Anab Seraibe, the action is nothing but an attempt to ridicule the governor. He therefore asked the lawmakers to explain to Rivers people the motivation for their action.
The Constitution is very clear on what ground you remove a governor. So what has he committed? We don't hear any crime. They would have said he has done this, he embezzled this, he did this, or he did that. What was his crime?
Other residents describe the crisis as a third-term agenda by the former governor of the state, Mr. Nyesom Wike, asking him to allow the governor run his administration.
We are not surprised at the turn of events, because the APC in Rivers had clearly stated that this was purely a third-term agenda. We are not surprised at all. It is only about the timing that we're being surprised about.
Lagos should allow the Rivers people to breathe fresh air and concentrate on the FCT position is holding. Right now, as we speak today, I have dislocation because my leadership, under my leadership, the South Youth Initiative, we decided today to pay our support to this, the governor of Rivers State, Siminalayi Fubara. We don't work with him, but we are not happy about the situation.
Meanwhile, normalcy has returned to the House of Assembly complex, but it's not certain when the lawmakers will again sit in the House.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, yesterday, this matter took our attention and we looked at the angles of the law to it. But how about the leadership angle to it this morning? And that's what we have to discuss with Dr. Sam Adeyemi, a strategic leadership consultant who also happens to be a clergyman. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
We discussed, this a little yesterday, but while some are saying, of course, it's a political crisis, at the end of the day, these are both leaders that are being mentioned in here. Would you say it's a political crisis or a leadership crisis?
Well, it's a combination of both. There's the politicking and there's the leadership. And the political side is being resolved, right? Because from the reports on the news, the president intervened. They said elders in the state are intervening. But they said it's a family issue, which is fine. However, there is also the leadership dimension to it. As I was looking at the scenario, I remembered a research carried out by two professors, Kuzes and Posner, and they put the summary of the results in the book they called The Leadership Challenge. They interviewed thousands of people and asked, what do you like to see in your leaders? The first thing, what came topmost was, we want our leaders to model the way. They said they want them to give us an inspired vision. They want them to challenge the process. In other words, a leader must bring improvement. That's the essence of leadership. It's managing the change process. And then they said, you need to empower people to act. And finally, you need to encourage the act, the heart. So when I looked through all that, first there was this model the way, Oh, no. What kind of an example is this in terms of leadership? I think we're making progress, though, because some years back, I felt very sad the day some young kids were taken from school to the National Assembly on excursion. And that happened to be the day that members of the National Assembly were throwing chairs at one another. I felt really sad. So we've had less of that up until now. However, in terms of modeling, there are question marks here. What's the vision, really? Is this contributing to the development of Rivers State or Nigeria? And then talking about empowering, challenging the process. Is this going to improve our political process? Is this going to empower people to act? Does this encourage somebody's heart? I'm listening to citizens of Rivers State, and they're angry, and they're saying that they're sad. So we need to pay attention to the leadership dimension of everything going on, and I think we need to do it with urgency.
But the polarity, or rather the situation where people are polarized because of these interests is a concern. You heard those who are saying, okay, you know, one person should allow the governor to do his work. And we also hear on the other side, those in Abuja, you know, who held a press conference in Abuja, who we are told are believed to be on the side of the Minister of the FCT, who is former governor of the state. So it seems that the people are polarized against each other. So we can't just say this is just a political crisis and it's being resolved. What's the assurance we have that this is not going to happen again? So in terms of, I mean, you've talked about the fact that, you know, this needs modeling. Is this something that has to be done over time, or how do we ensure that people are not polarized against themselves when political juggernauts have a disagreement?
Well, this issue of the people being polarized, it's been there all the while. It's the, you know, it's the card that politicians play all the time. We're polarized along ethnic lines. We're polarized along religious lines, polarized along political lines. And that makes it really easy for the kind of leadership we have had to continue. We need a total change in the leadership system, and that's why I emphasize a lot on culture, specifically the leadership culture. When something produces the same result over and over and over again, it has moved everybody into autopilot. At an individual level, we call that habit. Yes, you have your fantastic New Year resolution. Like you said, we have 2 months to go now, and then everybody will make New Year resolutions. Yet, some people find out their lives actually don't change. Why? Their habits. The human system is so powerful. It, as soon as it can, moves some things into the subconscious that we don't even need to think about, but we do. At a collective level, we're on a dangerous path when it comes to leadership. You will just notice we've been producing the same results. I'm not that old, but in the few decades that I have spent in Nigeria and in Africa, we've been producing the same results over and over and over again. So we need to pay attention, whether it's a monarchical system of government or democratic, or even, so there is monarchy and there is the democratic, right? Or the military. We've been producing the same result. Poverty, right? Deprivation for the people. It's terrible. And everything comes from leadership. My friend, Dr. John Maxwell, says, everything rises and falls on leadership. I say wherever the head goes, that's where the rest of the body goes. Some people say the fish rots from the head. It's still saying the same thing. So we need to pay attention to leadership. They say when 2 elephants fight, the grass suffers for it. I even have a problem with that description. Why should you describe the people as grass? The people are supposed to be the elephant in the room anyway. So we need to pay attention to leadership and how it is done, and to change the belief system and the values that we have, and hold leaders accountable now to our vision.
We'll come to how we get that done, because the Minister of Information and National Orientation has also, that tends to have created that agenda for himself, you know, that we need to change things along this particular path. But this is not the first time we're having this kind of political crisis, leadership crisis, whatever you want to call it. And it manifests in different ways. It raises the question of succession. The former governor of Edo State had quite tiff with his deputy at the time who wanted to be governor. Current governor of Edo State is already in that same fray with his own deputy. The current situation in River State is one that the current governor, one can say, rode on the political machinery or infrastructure of the previous governor to get into office. So while all of that can be said, okay, maybe it's some kind of succession system, you know, and all of that, but it questions the success of that succession program. Do you think we have a succession culture in our country, particularly in the political space for now?
Okay, so whenever I look at leadership within the context of Africa, I've come to the conclusion that the average African has the monarchical structure of leadership in our DNA. Honestly, it produces the same results in the family, in businesses, right, in government, even in our religious organizations. We treat our leaders like kings. And what we need to bear in mind is in the monarchical structure, you don't have elections. You leave office when you die. We're now trying to build a democratic system on that foundation. So people leave office without wanting to leave office, right? So we have this godfatherism and all of that. So this brings me back to the culture issue. We need to actually discuss the country, discuss our collective vision. My proposal is we need to be discussing the development of Nigeria. Nigeria becoming a developed country like yesterday. We should have done that like yesterday. I'm asking myself, where did we decide we were going to be in 2023, 20 years ago, 30 years ago? It's the countries that made that decision that are thriving now. So it is when you discuss that vision that you ask yourself, what will take us there? Government is only a vehicle. You decide the kind of vehicle that will take you to where you are going when you've decided where you are going, whether it's a car, a boat, or an aircraft. We've not decided yet where we're going, not to talk of the kind of vehicle that will take us there. So getting down to those technical issues, you find out we will discuss strategy, but like Professor Peter Drucker said, the culture will eat your strategy for breakfast.
Oh dear. Well, so many questions to ask you, but Chamberlain and Mokwe have questions for you. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Adeyemi. Good to see you again. No, I'm just wondering, looking at this scenario playing out in Rivers, and of course we also know that there are challenges across board in terms of what do people expect of the leadership. In fact, I've had several of these politicians tell us behind the scenes, look, we don't think like you guys. You guys may do your things, but that's not how politicians think. So it just appears as though they are set in their ways. So from what you're seeing, how far or close are we to imbibing some of these ethos to the extent of making meaningful impacts on moving the country forward?
More Chamberlain, how far or close are we? We have a long way to go, and the earlier we get on the way, the better, right? So I've been asking myself, in all this scenario, what do the people get, right? Leadership is about people. So what do the people get? How is this going to improve anyone's life? So we need to discuss leadership, right? And leadership is ability to influence one or more people to achieve goals. I go back to the vision issue. So when I read Why Nations Fail, right, again by two professors, Asemoglu and Robinson, they said all over the world, human nature is the same. You have this elite class, just a small number of people, small percentage. They take control of the political process. They use political power to channel economic resources to benefit themselves and the people close to them. And the countries that have progressed the most are those that have changed that structure. So right now, what the politicians have said to you, they're just being honest. This is not about the people at all. The politicians negotiate among themselves, right? There are I have friends in government, and I know there are people that actually mean to do well. But the current structure, the current culture is overwhelming. And once majority of the people want things to remain the way they are, nobody is going to change anything. I mean, like a former governor, who's a friend, said one day members of his own cabinet were having a discussion somewhere. And they were saying, the governor would just be saying, vision, vision, vision. Is it vision we want to eat? Okay, let's share the money, right? And that's a governor talking about members of his own cabinet. So we need to get the people enlightened. But then those of us in government, in leadership right now, also need to urgently develop sophistication in leadership. And that's why I encourage, it's either we're going for training or we're getting coaches to advise us on the people's side of our job. We can't stop politicking, right? That's how we got there. But we need people to advise us on the people part of the job. And then more importantly, we need to know how to shift people's mindsets. We need to attend conferences, ongoing training and advice, shifting our ideas, because there are so many things coming at the leader. So I'm encouraging those of us who are currently in leadership, we need advice on how to do this people part. For those of us that are citizens, the earlier we develop our leadership skills, the better for all of us. Because at the end of the day, it's the average leadership quotient that will determine how fast we travel. I mean, this week, I've created platforms to help the people, to help those in government. And this week, I'm really looking forward to one of those platforms we created. We call it the Excellence in Leadership Conference. And we have thousands of people attend, where we share ideas, move things in the minds of leaders, because people are not going to travel faster than the leaders go.
For you, I mean, with all of those conferences and methods, the books that you've written, how do you measure whether or not, people are imbibing some of what you're saying, and then they're making impact in society? Because some people, I mean, after certain conferences, ordinarily you'll expect that not just them attending and listening, but it becomes part of their character, their way of life, if I could use that way. So for you, how do you measure it to see, okay, well, some of what we're saying are actually being actualized and people are making an impact, and so we could keep going?
Thank you. It's feedback, right? Feedback. We ask the people that attend the conferences, ask those that attend our training. I mean, like, I founded a leadership school some 21 years ago. We call it the Daystar Leadership Academy, because I found out we had only one business school in Nigeria, and most people could not afford to go there. So we provided an alternative, cheap for everybody to attend. So we get feedback, right? And what we want to see is how their own thinking has changed, how much of self-awareness they have, the values they have imbibed, and the people they are influencing. I'm glad to know that I get feedback, interestingly, third-party feedback also from the people that they lead. It's amazing that employers say, for example, that products of our leadership training school and conferences are the best employees they have. That's one of the things that makes me happiest. I attended an event in Atlanta, Georgia, and there was someone there who did not recognize me, who knew me but did not recognize me until after I had started speaking. Then the person spoke up and said, you know what, I have friends that have attended your training. It may seem like nothing is changing, but I want to assure you a lot is changing. Somewhere along the line, when we get our politics right in Nigeria, those people you're training are the ones that will provide the best quality of leadership in the country.
So my question is, how do we affect the politics? Because really, that's where the biggest impact is felt, Dr. Adeyemi. While you were speaking, you said a people cannot run faster than their leaders. And it would seem that, everybody you speak to will say the problem with this country is leadership. Leadership. Whatever level you look at, leadership. You have spoken to a number of things. That I have had on my mind. Even the questions that I have penned down, you've answered them. But I'm wondering, I think Chamberlain has asked that. Maybe I just missed the answer. How do we affect the leadership space? Coincidentally, maybe it's really no coincidence, the president and his ministers will be starting a retreat this morning. So maybe while you also answer that, if you could address them, if you had the opportunity to address, I don't even know if you've been invited to address them, but if you had the opportunity to address them, what will you be saying to them?
Thank you, Maokwe. So a few years back, I was at a meeting just a few days before this big event that happens in the US, the Super Bowl. And my friend, who's also a leadership expert, said, I know the team that is going to win. I said, oh, how come? He said the team with the better bench strength will win. So he said when the people on the bench are as good as the ones on the field, then you have a good chance of winning. I said, oh, wow. His prediction came true. And then just shortly after that, they were having the Europa Champions Cup in Europe. So I applied the same principle. I assessed the teams. Honestly, the principle worked. The two teams were equally good and nobody was scoring. One player was introduced from one team. He sank the other team. He scored the 2 goals that decided the finals. So here we are in Nigeria. What I would like to say to those of us in leadership is anywhere in the nation, in your organization, the team with the better bench strength will win. How do you create leaders? It's the quality of Nigerians that will determine the quality of Nigeria. We can be toying with and tweaking some of the strategies and plans and factors that we have. But I remember what the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Wale Adeyemo, they call him Wale, but we know he is Wale, right? Adeyemo. When he came to Nigeria, he said the government is moving in the right direction, making some policy changes. He said, however, before Nigeria will attract the kind of foreign direct investment it wants, it must address some macroeconomic factors, and we're not addressing them yet. And he said the core factor has to do with the people. So I would say we need to raise leaders. Nigerians need to become leaders, high-quality leaders, citizens now. The days of believing that it's the people at the top that are leaders, everybody else is called to be a follower, those theories are dead. Leadership happens at all levels. If you don't improve the quality of the Nigerian, we're not improving the quality of this country. Leadership is not a day's job, it's a daily job. In the places where leadership works, you groom people from childhood. It's got to be there from primary school to secondary and all the way. What goes into the mind comes out in the life. What do we have in our country? You are raised in deprivation, you are desperate for survival. When that grows with you into adulthood and you become a governor, what do you go for? You have access to the resources that belong to everybody. You want to take care of yourself and your generations to make sure you never sink back into poverty. I'll tell you how they do it elsewhere. When you're in primary school, they take you to the orphanage. They take you to other non-profits. They teach you volunteering. They teach you service. At the highest level of your life, it will be what you give that will make you successful, not what you get. You are moving from high school into university, they ask you to write a personal statement. Apart from your academic qualifications, one of the major things they're looking for is the volunteering that you have done. They know if you move into university, you become sophisticated in management, but you are still self-centered, you will be a liability on the society. So I will ask that we pay attention to the average Nigerian, pay attention to our educational system, because that shapes the mind. Put our best investment there. Until then, my friends in government will continue to be frustrated, even with the best of their efforts. The poverty will continue, the quality of life will not improve, the people in government will be taking as much as they want, they will get a bad name and a bad reputation, and they'll be frustrated that even with the best of their efforts, people are not praising them for their efforts.
Well, we've been told that oftentimes when leaders shy away from investing in long-term policies such as education, yet education, we all know, is the only way for a people to be able to make progress. I was having a conversation with former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and I can't forget what he said, that when you deprive a child of education, you've deprived that child of being able to be a meaningful citizen in the country. And I think that really summarizes at the heart of what it is that you're saying in terms of what needs to be done. But we know that oftentimes, because leaders have just 4 years, they seem to be political leaders now, they seem to be under pressure to, want to show that they're doing something and not want to invest in long-term things that would take time to show fruit. For instance, now, you say that you've been in this leadership training business now for 21 years, and we're asking you, what is the impact given where it is that we currently are? So how would you advise leaders who have elections, and I use these words very advisedly, who have elections in another 3-4 years, who will need to show results and want to do things for their people, and also know that the places where the investment is really needed are long-term investments that will not immediately yield fruit. Yet, that's where the greatest resources are needed. What would you be saying to them?
Thank you so much. What I would say is, think very well about your place in history. Stephen R. Covey said in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the first habit, begin with the end in mind. The countries that are thriving the most now, there was foundation laid by leaders some centuries ago. I studied civil engineering in school. And I know you want to construct a building, you start first with the concept, with the vision. The building needs to solve a problem. It needs to meet some needs. Who are the people that will occupy the building? What are their needs? How many rooms do you need? And so on. How many stories do you need to build? So you need to know your place in history. If you are around at the point of conceptualizing, accept that, okay? Be an architect, draw the plan. It is somebody else that will come and construct the building. The people that work at the foundation laying stage are different from the ones that work at finishing stage. You notice the ones at the foundation laying stage, they use very rough equipment, that dig the earth. But when you bring the guys at finishing stage, painting, those ones, they work with finesse and with accuracy. What's your own place in history? That's what I would ask someone who has 4 years in office. But, Maupe, I will swing this issue back to the people. The fact that we actually need to redefine leadership, move the discussion away from leaders to leadership. Okay? Leaders has to do with personalities and position. But leadership is a principle, it's a concept. And once you move the discussion there, then we're talking about everybody, because leadership happens at all levels. And that's why I would say to the people, right, we need to develop our own leadership skills. Because it's when we develop our power, that's when we can hold the people holding positions accountable. I've seen some administrations try to create a vision for Nigeria. It's not going to work. How do you create a vision for Nigeria when you have only 4 years, right? It's the people that need to create the vision. Nigerians need to take control. Now, this is, I know this is challenging, but we actually don't even have options. Nigerians need to discuss the future of Nigeria now. Interestingly, when I speak to the northerner, I speak to the person in South-South, I speak to the person in Southwest, all of us want the same thing. We want a developed Nigeria. Why are Nigerians shipping out, especially the younger generation? We're moving to countries that are developed where we can realize our potentials. Let's make Nigeria that country. So I would say, The discussion is to start with Nigerians. What kind of Nigeria do we want? We need to discuss it, and we need to ask the people in leadership, in government, to let us start from there. You don't build a house from the roof. Let's discuss it. I remember 2014, we spent billions of naira having that discussion. The report is buried somewhere. We've not had the courage to discuss again. That's where to start from. If you don't agree on where you are going, any road will take you to where you are going, and you should not complain if you find yourself in the jungle. Let's discuss where we're going. And that will be leadership from the level of the people. That will then give those who go into government what to do. Just your own part. Do the 4 years or 8 years. Move on. Leave the job to somebody else. Let them continue. Nobody's going to transform Nigeria in 4 years or 8 years. We have to agree on that.
Now to you, Ayo.
Well, thank you, Maokwe. Your question, Maokwe, leads me to ask this question, Dr. Adeyemi. Do we have a leadership training system in Nigeria?
I would say no. Why? Because the basic components are not there. There are institutions, right, that help to, build someone into a leader. It starts from the family. So yes, we have the family. We have families in Nigeria. However, the pressure that is coming on families because of the economic situation and so on is eroding our values. The very place where character should be built. And they say the first 7 years are critical for shaping the values of a child. But here you are, instead of paying attention to character, right? Families are chasing what to eat. You're having a scenario where somebody is being owed 6 months' salary, right? Because the person is working for the government. These things have impact. And the younger generation grows up looking at the parents and thinking, 2 generations are not going to be foolish, consecutively. Okay. All this theory you are teaching is not working. So you have the family, you have the schools, we know they are run down. Yeah. Public schools, we have the religious organizations, and the economic structure, to a large extent, shapes people's thinking.
Dr. Adeyemi, one of the things that raises this issue for me is the qualifications for getting into leadership positions in our country. Before you get into civil service, maybe level 6 or so, you have to have a first degree. Before you become president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you only need to attempt WAEC, not even JAM. So, and that's why I'm asking that question, because a good number of people are wondering if that is for the president, imagine what then is for a councillor, for the local government chairman, a state governor, and on and on and on like that, members of the Houses of Assembly. That's the reason I'm asking that question. Because the last time you were with us, you said being in office doesn't make you a leader. So that's why I'm asking that question. Is this something that, how do we create that culture where we actually have a system? I mean, you've spoken to the fact that primary school, secondary school, and all those things, but we're too much in a hurry. Things have gone awry so bad. People want results now, and you are telling us 4 years is not enough. So what do we do? Are we doomed?
Well, we are not doomed. That's where the power of vision is, right? So there was this Harvard professor that discovered the law. They call it the law of time perspective. The longer the time you take into consideration in making your decisions and taking action, the higher you rise. It's actually a principle, it's a law. You can't break it. It's the one that has the power to break you. The person planning for 10 years will always rise higher than the person planning for 10 months or only 10 weeks. So we cannot escape the long-term dimension. However, we need short-term intervention right now, like you said. So we've got to, it's like cash crops. They usually take years before they begin to fruit. But you need the food crops, right, to survive. That's why I would strongly recommend, if there's a leadership school, go to the leadership school, attend training. you know, and I don't just want to talk about it. That's why I started one. And I'm happy to say, you know, in referring back to the question Mark asked earlier about how we are measuring results, a good number of the products of our own leadership school have started their own leadership schools. That's why I'm encouraging, go for a seminar, go for a conference. Like we have one like this week, Thursday and Friday. Some of the people attending our own conference, leadership conference, which we started in 2008, they've also started leadership conferences. So sometimes change starts, right? It is people that are strategic that catch it on the fringes. Most people only see things the way they are. They don't see the change that is happening. Change has begun, but I'm advocating we actually need, a whole lot of us need to get involved instead of sitting down and just criticizing and criticizing and criticizing. That doesn't change anything.
Well, you've mentioned your conference twice. We're going to send you an invoice to that effect. But just a quick one before we go, if you can do this in 45 to 60 seconds. Right. Collaboration. Mark asked you a question about the ministers having a conference, starting a retreat. The challenge we had in the previous government is the president at the time over and over again kept asking the MDAs, ministries, departments and agencies to collaborate. The president, this current president, has also said Nigeria can become a $1 trillion economy over 10 years. And you know he has just about maximum 8 years if he gets re-elected again. So in that fray, and then the state governors, but he said we can only do that in collaboration with state governors. So how should those collaborations be happening? If you can do this in 45 to 60 seconds.
Okay. See, we have to bring human psychology into this. What actually drives most people in the country? What drives most of the people in leadership right now? Money. Money. There's a book, Culture Matters. It's, you know, the compilation of the presentations at a symposium held at Harvard University many years ago. They were checking the relationship between culture and development. They checked the factors that shape people's thinking and values. Prevailing ideas about prosperity came number one. Nigerians are not foolish. The instinct for survival is the strongest. The people you are asking to collaborate, the only collaboration that makes sense to them is how they make more money. I promise you that. All the contracts going out of the MDAs and so on, even the oversight functions from the National Assembly, it's money driving it. That's why vision is very important from a leader. You've got to sell that idea, transfer that idea into people's hearts about where we're going and how we will get there. It is that where we're going that will give the motivation to people to sacrifice. Okay. The people in leadership need to make sacrifices now before that collaboration can happen. But I promise you, most people in leadership right now are not thinking sacrifice. They are thinking survival.
Okay. You just opened another kind of worms that we have to take another time, some other time to do this. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Sam Adeyemi is a strategic leadership consultant. He's also a clergyman. Thank you for being here and good luck with your conference.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're back in a moment to take on another issue. Do stay with us.
All right, welcome back. Yes, indeed, we're looking ahead of the forthcoming off-cycle elections in Bayelsa, Imo, and Kogi states. As you've seen, the Ezewanwagu joins us next. He is the chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
Wow, one wonders. So how are the partners gearing up for this off-cycle elections?
Well, you know, this is going to be one other big hurdle in terms of how we deepen our electoral process. Some of those continuous lessons we need to be drawing. Those three states are going to be challenging.
Why so?
history, their history in terms of conduct of the stakeholders, especially the politicians in those 3 states, gives nightmare not just to those of us who are observing the elections. The independent the electoral management body, the security agencies are at tether's hook, if you like, at this point. And the reason is not far-fetched. Bayelsa, the control of politics there has largely been by some other forces other than just the voters, the role of the militants and all of that. In Imo, the activities of the known, unknown gunmen and the pervading insecurity in that state is a huge issue. And then, of course, you know that if you saw what happened in Kogi in the last governorship election, and indeed, even in 2023, you see that there has to be much more work, really, for those 3. And it's, unfortunately, they are all court-ordered elections, and they have to be happening same day, 11/11.
What about preparations by INEC? Does it infuse any confidence?
I think oftentimes sometimes I make this argument, and I don't like to continue to do that, but it's helpful to understand that INEC will prepare for elections. All the buckets are being filled in terms of what needs to happen. You know, stakeholder engagements to ensure that people collect their PVCs, deployment of materials. All of that happens, you know, nearly hitch-free until the E-Day, you know, the election day proper, where opening of polls can be affected by logistics. Punctuality index can also be affected by logistics. That is, especially now when you look at the canopy under which this particular election is happening, where the vendors, the transport vendors for INEC at the national level are embroiled in crisis. The NURTW, for instance, who are, for some reasons, are the ones INEC continues to engage to move materials, election materials from one point to another. Yeah. Now, those ones are embroiled in crisis. How that affects the subnational chapters of those unions is something that INEC needs to work very hard on to ensure, because in good times, they renege on MOUs. So now that they have, you know, crisis at the top level, I don't know how that will impact.
You know, part of why I asked, because I thought that time and again, this key component, that part always is a challenge, most times. And I thought that when INEC meets with political parties, civil groups, they raise these things, and then they could even suggest, because they keep insisting on using this larger body because they say they're the largest one. So must we continue that way? Can there be some
Well, there's been a lot of, you know, conversations around alternative transport provisioning. But I've heard INEC say they tested some of these alternatives, for instance, in Anambra State. You know, when we had the last civil society engagement, these questions came up. And the INEC chairman said, look, we did meet the transport companies. They promised that they had, you know, the capacity to deal with these issues. And then on the E-Day, they just tell you that they are trying to source vehicles from other people and those things didn't work. And then we are not ready for those excuses. So, but NURTW may not, they have their people. So what needs to happen is to be able to enforce those MOUs and sanction where there is a, what do you call it, infraction. But that doesn't seem to, why that doesn't happen is what I've always wondered about. Why, for instance, you pay somebody 50% of mobilization, and then on the E-Day, the person says is not coming. And then nothing is done.
I see a racket going on somewhere.
Yes, somehow there are issues, of course. Those are also challenges. But the thinking around logistics needs to continue in terms of what needs to be done to crack that very.
What would you suggest? I mean, you've been there for.
I've talked about we were thinking of, you know, bigger logistic companies that are everywhere. But you also know the issue of fear in business. What happens to my vehicle is election. It's not something that we have not come to that point where people go just vote and go away. There are the place of talks, the place of...
Well, you can factor it into the negotiation. Insurance companies, those things can be worked out.
No, but Chamberlain, you live here. you live here. You are not from the moon. If insurance companies will not pay you when your vehicles are damaged immediately, you are out of business. Well, most of these businesses are not. I'm just saying that fear.
If it's comprehensive, I think
that fear is. See, we trust foreign insurance companies. You know why? Many of those foreign insurance companies are the ones we trust because we know that when we get into them. I think that's not a discussion for here. But what for me is important.
I hope NICOM is listening so they can do something about this.
What for me, that's why you can't have foreign banks don't thrive so much here. The reason they don't thrive here is because people trust their money with somebody they know, they can see. But they trust their life with somebody where there's a guarantee that if something happens to them. So you find that banks thrive, our indigenous banks thrive, but insurance companies don't do so well because of some of these variables. The same reason why, for instance, Ford will not sell very well in America and then Innocent will be struggling here. The Japanese, you know, will sell their vehicles there. Their own people may not naturally be importing cars from other places. So the big challenge for me really has to do with much more engagement with these transport providers in a way that guarantees that they will do what they have said they will do. And when they don't do, there is sanctions in terms of whether it's legal, whether it's sanctioned not to use those particular ones other times. But there's an expansion. And remember that the Kogi, the 3 states have riverine components in the planning. Mm-hmm. So you are engaging maritime unions, you are dealing with the Navy, Air Force, gunboats.
It's just 3 states. So if they normally tell us, I think police will tell you they're deploying 5,000 police officers, then NSCDC will equally deploy. So if a combination,
who counts?
30.
Who counts those numbers? See, the political economy of those security deployment is itself a challenge. So as people who move around, you see more policemen at the INEC. If you go to Kogi, for instance, you are likely going to see more policemen at the INEC state headquarters than you are going to see in Dekina or in Olamaburu. You know, so because you need, they told us 40,000 of them will be in Imo, for instance. So when you go to Owerri INEC, you see policemen everywhere. But as you move down to Olu, you move to Mbise, you move to Okigwe, you move to Ngopala, the numbers starts distilling. And lack of coordination, territorialism, where because of the political economy that I've talked about, everybody wants to be on their own. The Intelligence Consultative Committee on Election...
How? Security agencies?
Security-wise, this NSGC that you are talking about, coordination in terms of number, in terms of the work. So if the Intelligence Consultative Election Security, that should be that platform of coordination. In the field, everybody is on their own. You see NSDC trying to do their own thing. And it all has to
even though they meet together in INEC office.
They meet at the Intelligence Consultative Committee on Election Security. They put out these numbers. But as we speak, and having done this for a long time, that is where attention is not being paid. Because mobilization for those officers most times are at the state headquarters. You see the numbers at the state headquarters. But the real places where they are needed is in the backwater communities, in the hinterlands, where you actually need effective policing of, the electoral process. So because when you see that number, at this age, you say, oh, they deployed 40,000 people. But we know that the challenges has had more to do with lack of coordination and the territorialism that goes with it.
I've been listening to you, and I don't know whether to be depressed or encouraged. listening
to how much we spend every year. Every 4 years for elections.
And whether or not we really understand, what democracy is about, whether we understand the place of elections in our democracy and the role that it plays, or whether it is the desperation of our politicians that, continues to fuel the level of violence that we see or we anticipate in elections. Because as you've said, you say even observers have nightmares. If observers who have a choice as to where they want to go and observe the elections, whether they even just want to stay in the capital, will have nightmares, how much more those who must deploy, because elections must take place to the smallest ward, to the smallest polling unit, and it must be substantially complied with. So I'm just wondering, how would you say, how would you, rate the chances of us being able to conduct free, fair, and credible elections in these 3 states, given the challenges which you've already enumerated? This is minus the fact that we're coming from an election that people are going to say, oh, the confidence of the people have dipped somewhat, and they might not be as active, they might not be as enthusiastic as they normally ought to be for even elections that are closer to them. What are the chances that we'll be able to achieve, conclusive elections this time around?
You see, the governorship elections are the most contested. Really, that's what the experience has. That's where the theater of, engagement, that's where it happens. So, free, fair, credible election. Oftentimes, when we hold that conversation, if you also listen to Chamberlain, the first point is always, what will INEC do? And my argument is that we give comfort to the folks who contribute much more to whether you have credible, fair, acceptable, conclusive, inclusive election. And that is the politicians. They are candidates. Their rule affects the quality of election. And because we over-respect them, we don't always have. So I'm excited when this kind of conversations come to put their leg on the fire. That if the politicians decide to behave well, INEC would get core members, get ad hoc staff.
We should equally put pressure on the police.
I'm coming now. I'm building something.
Okay. You're a good architect.
Yes, I'm building. I'm just telling you that if you watch, flagship programs like the one we are in now, 90% of the conversation is in what INEC will do, what INEC will do, what INEC will do. And sometimes the real guys, they are excited, they are happy. And they are like, wow, what will INEC do? INEC does not have thugs. INEC does not do voter suppression. INEC does not influence the security agencies not to mobilize security to where it is needed. So these people need to play their role. And if they play their role, then we will be a card-carrying member of a political party. And we have already petitioned. It's not that we are going to petition. We have petitioned again that this kind of, when you are struggling very hard to improve the electoral process, the human resource component needs to go side by side with that.
Because there's a picture of him in APC attire.
It's very clear. It's not AI. It's not AI. It's a photo of him.
There's a video as well.
Recently, that's what I'm saying. It's not AI. So you appoint somebody like that into a sacred institution where our leadership recruitment process is conducted. The optics that you put forward is that that institution should not be trusted. And it is the responsibility of that institution itself, is the responsibility of that institution to even vanguard, these things that they have outsourced to civil society. There are other folks. Okay. There is somebody who was, sacked for misconduct from a particular university. He's back in another university. In that university, he's being investigated as we speak now. He made the list.
Why do we do this?
Who was this gentleman?
We'll say one Yalwa from University of Abuja. He was sacked from the
Professor Mohammed Yelwa,
yes.
Niger State resident electoral commissioner.
Yes, he was removed from the IBB University. He found his way back to University of Abuja. As we speak now, he's undergoing some distance from his conduct. So these issues are there. When we raised those issues, they took us to court. Ask channels to bring the video of where we made those statements.
We'll have the video.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about the former ones. We were petitioned. We went to the police to go and defend simple act. And you brought myself and the chair. You brought myself and the chair of the what do you call it? The Senate Committee on Electoral Matters to this place. And he said the reason they didn't look at our petition was because we did not swear to affidavit. And today he didn't make it back to the National Assembly.
Yeah, but I don't know whether we should be afraid, because I'm looking at this gentleman from Akwa Ibom State, and I also know that the current Senate president is from Akwa Ibom State, and oftentimes he wields the gavel.
No, in this particular case, he cannot wield that gavel. He holds that position in trust for the Nigerian people. It's a position he holds in trust for the Nigerian people to do and uphold the Constitution. So he cannot support the inclusion of somebody who is patently partisan into an institution that is called Independent National Electoral Commission.
What if he says, I've resigned, I am no longer partisan? I used to be, I joined the APC so and so time.
Oh, you just wait the bloom some few days.
I'm no longer partisan. That was a long time ago. What happens?
The Constitution says people of unimpeachable character. So if you resigned, you are partisan. And this institution is not for people who have partisan inclinations. There are conflict of interest issues. It manifested in 2019 when we filled up those positions with people who had this kind of, and we saw it manifest in Adamawa. We saw it manifest in Imo.
Aren't those two separate issues?
They are not separate, they are together.
Being of impeachable character, are you saying everybody in political parties don't have good character? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying so. I'm saying that if you have challenges in terms of partisanship, you have already impugned your ability to work effectively in a way that will be acceptable to generality of Nigerians who see you and know you to be. So even when you do things that are, okay, they will immediately associate it with your past. That past will haunt every step that you take. And that's why there is a screening. That's why you have to go to this DSS. That's why you have to go to... Otherwise, we should just appoint people and they take office. The reason we pass them through screening is to be able to ensure that they fulfill not just the spirit and letter of the Constitution, but that even the optics. We want to create an INEC that people can have confidence in the human beings that work there, that they are able to discharge their duties without, fear of responsibility. But even if it's an ongoing thing, we hope that the National Assembly will do the right thing this time around, and we are counting on the relevant committees of the National Assembly to do their job. What we do is, as civil society, is to provide these materials and say, you look at it. At the end of the day, if you choose to, sometimes the challenge also is that the beneficiaries of some of these affidavits are the politicians, and oftentimes they are themselves the people who decide whether those people pass.
We'll look to see what kind of defense they will bring this time, because the script is always that I've resigned, I'm no longer this, I'm no longer that. But we'll have next questions.
And the evidence.
Oh, the pictures are everywhere. So, and the video, in fact, as a matter of fact, for some of this, and the records as well are also there. So we'll look to see how that defense will come through. But I want to thank you for coming on. Ezemamago is the chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. We'll be back in just a moment. Stay on with us. All right, welcome back. Aliyu Aldu is a special assistant to the president on public affairs. He joins us here this morning for the retreat. There's going to be a ministerial retreat today for 3 days. Okay, so what is this going to be about, really?
Good morning, Nigerians. It's about setting the agenda and bringing the different units of federal government to aligning with the central vision. The renewed hope agenda.
That's what the MDAs or what?
No. The cabinet, the cabinet ministers, the special advisors, then the head of different, top government officials, basically, coming together to have this retreat to set a direction. Bring everybody on board so that everybody moves in one direction as to, delivering on the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President. That's what the retreat's basically about.
Do they get a feel? Are they likely going to also talk about challenges that Nigerians are facing? Because we expect that they all know some of these things. So will that then mean that they're going to pull together and ensure that they come up with policies deliberately targeted at ensuring that they mitigate that kind of impact that people have?
All right. So the challenges are well known to Mr. President and the team. And, if you look at the policies so far, Mr. President has come up with policies in the right directions. But like we've said time and time again, policies alone don't cut it. The people don't see policies, they don't feel policies. So the programs and the projects and all of that are going to come in. This is why the retreat at this point is essential. This is why it is in itself is a sign of hope. It gives us hope that, we have an idea of what corporate governance is. We're bringing that into government. We have a president who is experienced in this. It's not just about fixing our today's challenge. It's not just about getting as much money as just put into quick fixes. No, we need to have a mid and a long-term plan for the country. When he was in Lagos, he had a 25-year plan for Lagos. It's 24 years now. We can look back at Lagos from 1999 till date and look at we know what the plan's been. They've been. It's about time. The last 4 months has been about those challenges you've talked about. Getting to understand them in their real form, getting to understand what has been done in the past, why those plans in the past have failed, what needs to be done now, and what we need to get going in the immediate. The very start point of that is getting everybody in his team on the same page, pulling in the same direction, and understanding what deliverables are expected, setting KPIs and all the other metrics, and ensuring that positions are evaluated. Are they going to
publicize it? Will they publicize those KPIs so people know?
Oh yes. The very essence of governance is
you are certain of that this will be publicized? Because oftentimes what we hear is the ministers are serving at the pleasure of the president. Yep. And that he is the one to hold them accountable. If they are not meeting the KPIs maybe they've both agreed on and said it is his prerogative. He doesn't have to put it out there. But this is not the first time retreats are being held.
Now, it's when people say that, it's because of lack of understanding of what government is about. The constitution from which government derives its power and its power and its authority has said rightly that the sovereignty of the country belongs to the people, from which the government derives this power.
No, don't get it twisted.
Let me get it. I'm coming somewhere. Mm-hmm. We went through what we went through to bring in a president whom we can speak for. We can speak for his understanding of the essence of government. We can speak for his understanding of corporate governance. He's experienced in it, and he has proven it in public office, like he has proven it in private sector.
So based on that, you are confident that the KPIs will be published?
Yes. It's information. Information is power, and power belongs to the people.
But I think it's very important that you know that the people always knew that sovereignty lied with them. And when they made this request, this was the response that spokesperson in the past, like
a different president
like yourself, had given to them. So
we have a different president now. He understands what that means, and he's committed to it. you know, and he has zero affinity for failure, and he's going to ensure that happens. That's what I can tell you.
How much can the aides and all of them achieve without states?
That's what the president has always said. If you know something about this president, he has repeated key part of governance. You know, his ideology. He's from before the campaign, even when he wasn't. You know, he was just making you know, comments on national issues, and during the campaign and after the campaign, there's got to be collaboration between the national and the sub-nationals. And he's tried at every point to carry everybody along. I mean, it is clear of how understanding of that collaboration, how much of understanding of that he has, that, you know, you have the government of other political parties at different levels, you know, all saying good things about him, you know, about how he's trying to ensure he pulls everybody together. It's a national objective. We need to succeed as a people. It's not the APC that needs to succeed. This president knows that. He's willing to ensure that, and he's working on that, and that's why he's doing everything, bring everybody on board, and ensure that, you know, everything. I mean, he's coming with his card face up.
Does he have information as to how the states have utilized the palliatives? Is there transparent lists or something? Is he aware of any of this? Because people are asking questions.
If we do not take our time to look at much bigger issues, if we want to spend, you know, our critical time on looking at the small things, which is what I mean we've done. I mean, we can make noise all about on that.
5 billion is small for each state.
I mean, it's 2 billion that has been given.
5 billion is approved.
Yes, but 2
3
billion
will be released.
But we've seen. I am telling you that the president at this point, with all of the challenges before him, shouldn't focus his attention on.
He just gives money, doesn't care how they spend it.
He shouldn't focus his attention on, you know, going to the monitoring.
On transparency.
The monitoring will come. I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be right now. There are more important things at this particular time
than transparency.
That more important thing is setting agenda for the government, getting everybody to understand. The moment he has given out everybody's KPIs, then, you know, everybody goes back to the field and start working. He has time to now start, you know, evaluation, monitoring. That is where all of this comes in. Right now, he needs to set plan in motion, which is what this retreat is about.
All right, Ali Aldu, Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
So let me just read out this Nigeria Labour Congress press release. Days of industrial action in Imo State begins. The statement says, in furtherance of implementing the decision of the National Executive Council, NEC, of the Nigeria Labour Congress on Imo State as a result of the habitual abuse and violation of the rights of workers in the state by the government, the NLC declares the commencement of an industrial action on Wednesday, the first day of November 2023, that's today. Every necessary step has been taken to ensure the effective of this action for the liberation of the workers in the state who have been held captive, intimidated, and grossly violated by government that ought to protect them. So the last second page, the other part of the paragraph here says, as a result of this industrial action, there will be a total shutdown of activities in Imo State. This action is a demonstration of the NLC's strong outrage and determination to bring about positive change for the workers of Imo State. Wherever may be the unfortunate outflow of this engagement will be entirely, or whatever it says, will be entirely the fault of the government of the state, and we urge all lovers of Imo State to hold the governor and his government entirely responsible. We will be here until workers that are being owed are paid and all the benefits outstanding, including various breaches of rights of workers in the state, are stopped. The Nigeria Labour Congress once again advises members of the public to disregard any contrary information disseminated by the agents of the state government stating that the action has been called off. So this is the latest statement from Labour about what will be going on today.
Signed by who? Does it say?
That's from the, let me see if I can get that out again. Yeah, Comrade Emmanuel Ugboaja, General Secretary. of Nigeria Labour Congress.
So that's coming from the national headquarters
because yesterday
of the
we
Nigeria
heard that
Labour
they said,
Congress.
no more, it's not going to happen again. So they just sent this statement to us saying, look, this is the latest position from them. So who knows? Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain and so goodbye.
Well, we see your feedback. So sorry we can't take them. Hopefully we'll be able to take it tomorrow. But we also hear you. Fuel price is now 700 naira in Yola. Is it Yola or Yobe? Let me just quickly confirm that now. It's in Damaturu, the Yobe State capital. Yes. So we see that 700 naira. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for watching this morning and for sending in your feedback. Hopefully we'll be able to take them tomorrow. I'm Malfa Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makide. Do have a productive day.